what we're doing here. We continue to see a homeless population along the river, and the PD's working with them also. For us, the concern oftentimes with them is they like cooking fires to cook their food. I can tell you on a personal note, I'm being pretty easy on folks down there right now. These homeless folks, due to COVID, don't want to go to the shelter. And I kind of understand that. And I think that as long as we all get along okay, obviously I don't let them burn stuff that they can't, but probably a little more tolerant than I have been in the past. Just as a personal note, I understand not wanting to go to a shelter right now. I get that. And that's no knock on the shelters either. It's just where we're at. As far as COVID goes, if you didn't know, this zip code in this area is one of the higher per capita concentrations of COVID. We continue to have COVID patients, especially at some long-term care facilities in the area. If you see us out in public, you will see us if we're out just at the store, you'll see us in a normal paper or some type of cloth mask, most likely of any kind. If we're on calls, we are wearing the N95s. Our stock continues to be pretty well there. As far as I know anytime I need a new one, I get it. So that's a good thing for me. But we would continue to wear those on all calls as long as COVID's as prevalent as it is. That's all I have, council member. Do you guys have any questions of me from the crowd or from you, council member?
I don't have any questions, but anybody in the audience, anybody from the DAB or anybody else? Questions for the captain? Looks like we're gonna let you off easy tonight.
That's nice.
That's right. Thanks for joining us. We really
Thank you. You guys have a good evening.
You too. Thanks, Captain. All right. Police reports. So who's starting?
I guess I can start.
Thanks,
Yeah, Officer Nate Sweetall, Patrol South, which represents the downtown area and Old Town area for District 6. I spoke with Officer Chrisman, who's the community policing officer for the area. He just wanted to report that there was 2 burglaries at the Industry nightclub, and working with the community partnerships, they identified the suspect who currently has a pickup for his arrest. So that's going to work out well. The Warren parking garage closure, which is they close the top to keep kind of like the motorbikes and cars from racing around, has been pretty much 100% success. And they've only had a couple of motorbikes access it up there, but it seems to be working well by doing that. In regards to our homeless population, we heard Fire just speak on it. We do continue to enforce camping along the river. We get tips from the community and other people, and we go out there and address those and give them warning and referrals to the shelter. The shelters are trying to make it safe. They are social distancing, keeping people 6 feet apart. We also have federal funds in place where if someone did get COVID, they would actually get 2 weeks in a hotel room. So those are set up and being ran through United Way and the 211 phone system. We recently this week, we had a meeting with Open Door Day Shelter and some of the neighboring churches about what we can do to prevent crime in the area. Just a lot of loitering, suspicion of drug selling, a lot of trash, camping, those type of things. And then we're going to work on trying to keep those trespassers and the people that prey on the homeless and your drug dealers out of the area, so that people that are homeless wanting services and get down to day shelter can do so without feeling victimized. Broadway corridor and also community policing has been involved in that. And we're actually believe we're starting to see some improvement. It is tough when those individuals that aren't wanting to comply or work with us, and the citation or notice to appear is given to them, they're not going to court because of COVID. So right now we're trying to, hopefully this will all blow over and those individuals can be held responsible for when they're not complying and continue to violate the law. We're also working with the prosecutor's office to address some of the problems with blocking the sidewalks in the area. There's some things about how far the curtilage goes up from the street up to the wall, that type of thing. And not going to bore you with the details, but I think it's some things that we're going to be able to work with when in the past, we couldn't. So I think that's going to make some great changes in regards to that as well. So that's all I had to report on. Do I have any questions from anybody?
Questions for Officer Nate? Anybody?
I'm letting off easy then now too, huh?
You are too. Thanks, Officer Sweetall. We appreciate you being here.
Thank
All
you.
right. I see Officer Widener on the call.
There we go. Hello, Councilwoman. I am Officer Casey Widener. I am the Community Policing Officer for 49 Beat. I'm new to the position, only been there a month. So I'm learning. I'm still learning on everything. One of the things I do want to bring up as far as problems I've been seeing a lot lately is gang graffiti. It's become a huge issue, especially at Evergreen. I know it's been very big there. I've been working with Parks and Rec and Public Works to get that all cleaned up, but it just keeps coming back. So Evergreen, Shell Park, I know has an issue. South Woodland Park has an issue. So 48 and 49 Beat, myself and the community policing officer for 48 Beat, which is Officer Soto, we've been working together to try to come up with some sort of plan to stop it. We encourage everybody, all citizens, call if you see anything suspicious. They're out here, they're making huge murals of their gang graffiti. So it's got to take some time. And I'm hoping that somebody sees something and says something, call 911, let us know. I'd love to catch these guys. So that's the main thing. I'm also seeing a little bit of larceny to autos. People are talking to them when they call to make their reports. They're telling me they're not locking their vehicles. Lock your vehicles. That'll be huge in curbing that issue. Take all your valuables inside. I can't stress that enough. I don't know why people aren't locking their vehicles, but in apartment complexes as well. I mean, that's a big one. People just walk through and check doors, and if yours is unlocked, you're gonna get your stuff stolen. So lock your vehicles, take all your valuables inside. I'm down this week. I'm very impressed. My burglaries are down 100% this week. Everything's been great, except for, like I said, my gang graffiti is my number one kind of priority at this point. So if anybody, I guess, has questions, I don't have anything else.
Questions, Mr. Widener?
I think I have one. I've noticed. My name's James Deckard. I'm actually in your beat in North Riverside. There's been a lot of gang graffiti I've noticed along 20th Street. Specifically, I'm actually driving past it between Hood and Payne. It keeps coming back on a wood fence. I know that the homeowner's been painting over it, but it keeps coming back, and it looks like they've given up on that.
Okay. Yeah, and I know that that's Officer Soto's main area. I don't know if he's aware of that. I'll pass it along to him if he's not. But I know he's been working hard too, trying to get everything cleaned up. I also did want to mention for citizens, if you see any gang graffiti or if you have it on your own property, you can report that yourself to Public Works. You just go to the website, wichita.gov, go to the Public Works and report an issue, and it's under nuisance. And you can do that and they'll contact you. You just have to sign a waiver to have them paint over your property, and they'll do it. But I'll let Officer Soto know. I know he's done a lot. The car wash at 21st and Arkansas. That's a huge one too. They've been hitting. So I'll let him know if he's not already aware of that. Do you know what specific it is?
It's not really readable. It, for me, it's more like black and scribbles. But I could send a picture to somebody. It is. I'm messaging Anna the location right now.
Okay. And if you want my email as well, anybody who wants that, it's K Widener, WEIDNER @wichita.gov. Or Officer Soto, it's J Soto @wichita.gov. So either one of those, you can get directly in contact with us.
Awesome.
Any other questions for Officer Widener?
Couple things. You guys have probably already thought about this, and it may not be feasible, but those high concentration areas of gang graffiti, it might be advantageous to discreetly place like a trail camera there and catch these little rascals in the act. Then you'd have the evidence as well.
Right. And
They're about $100 a piece.
yes, yes. Cameras are huge, and there are, I know there are cameras. And at the time that all of this was happening, every single camera system that we knew of was down. So that was our luck on that. We're still working on trying to recover some, at least from Evergreen, because I know their cameras had gone down after an accident hit a pole on 25th. So we were trying to go through City Hall to get those back to see if we could recover anything. But yes, we're definitely, cameras are great.
Well, I didn't make myself clear enough. What I was thinking of is more of the trail type cameras that deer hunters use.
Uh-huh.
They're small, they're compact, they're easy to be tucked away somewhere. Just something to think about for the future. I have left I'm going to switch gears on you. I left a voice message on the community officer line after 5 o'clock today. So hopefully one of the two of you will be calling me tomorrow. And what it's in regard to are two things. The Catholic Charities construction project at 37th and Walmer has been experiencing vandalism again, thefts, which I don't think the construction crews are reporting. And in addition, I should have reported this. About 2 weeks ago, I noticed a guy pop up from underneath the bridge that goes across the big ditch on Walmer.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we're starting to get a homeless population under that bridge again or what. So anyway, I'll talk with you guys more when somebody calls me tomorrow.
Yeah, that'll probably be me. I'll get that.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Officer Widener, for joining us this evening. Really appreciate it. All right. I think that's all the police on the call, right? Got everybody? Okay. All right. Park and Recreation, I think Gentry is with us.
Hi, everybody. I'll be keeping it pretty brief today. I don't have much to report on. On the recreation side of things, Evergreen is partnering with Sedgwick County Health Department for a mobile vaccine clinic for the back to school kids. It'll be on Thursdays from 9 to 4 p.m. I think that's starting later this month, but that's a really good opportunity for students, especially with sickness coming around, high concentrations of kids back in school, to come and get their vaccines done. We are looking at adding more sports at Evergreen Recreation Center. We know that there is a real need for youth activities in that area, and especially now during times of COVID. So we're looking to add those kind of events. And our Evolve guide for fall is out. So go check that out online at wichita.gov/evolve. And go check out what sort of classes and events you can register for this fall. We've got a lot of exciting programs going on. And then on the park side of things, David McGuire, the head of forestry and maintenance, has told me that at the end of this week or the beginning of next, they will start work on the South Woodland parking lot. So I know that's an issue that's been prevalent, and that hopefully we're coming towards making a good amount of progress on that with this new construction starting. Additionally, the last thing I have on my list is that we have been talking within the department and with other stakeholders about dog park master planning in District 6. We talked about it today at the park board meeting. Currently, there is no funding budgeted in either the general fund or it would come from the capital improvement fund. There is nothing written into the budget for this year or the coming years. But if that's something that became a priority in the future, that's something that we would negotiate into future capital improvement budgets. And our last dog park that was created, Harrison Dog Park, was done through a private partnership. So we are, of course, always seeking other funding as well. So that's all I have to report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Gentry?
Just a quick comment. We are, I guess, at the point where we've reached an agreement with Parks and Recreation on the Sherwood Glen Park. And so that should start moving here pretty quick. And I just want to kind of give a shout out, if I could, to Larry Hotmer and Brett Russell and Jan Long for the excellent work they've done supporting us and working through the issues.
We really appreciate that, and I'll be sure to relay that to them. They deserve high praise for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Gentry, how long is the vaccine program? You said on Thursdays. How long does it go?
That's not something that I know. I can get back to you and send that information to Anna.
So I actually have a little bit more information about that vaccine. So they started, their first week was actually last week. They started on Thursday, and they're going to be running that clinic every Thursday on campus at Evergreen until the end of October. So that gives parents enough time to get their kids vaccines up to date in order for them to go back to school, because there is a period where they have to be updated. So it's going to be every Thursday from 9 to 4, and all of the appointments have to be pre-scheduled. So there's a number, and I can post that on here. They have to be pre-scheduled. You call, you set up your appointment, and then you show up. That way they're maintaining people who come in, within enough time distance that there's proper social distancing when kids come in to get their vaccines.
Hey, Gentry, can you talk a little bit about so I know yesterday was Paddlepalooza, but can you talk a little bit just about the success of the kayak and paddle boat rentals this year?
Absolutely. So that was something we were really excited to partner with. A group of just private individuals who like to get out on the river on weekends organize this event. They started planning it about 5 weeks ago, which is really a quick turnaround for an event of this much success and size. But they wanted to get together people in Wichita that are regular users of the river, or were even first time just to get out on the river to try it out. So Wichita Park and Rec was able to partner with them and offer free rentals of our kayaks for the event. We had 3 different sessions in the afternoon. It was an event that lasted from 1:30 to 8:30. And we offered 3 different time slots for people to come out and take out a kayak on the river. And a lot of people took it down to the Keeper and then back to the Gander Mountain drop-off point. But it was a huge success. I would say in the afternoon session, there were around 100 to 120 people out on the river. And I was able to join in, and I have been on the river before, and I have to say that I've never seen quite that many boats on the river, and it was really spectacular to see. And we're looking forward to partnering with them next year, and hopefully there will be a lot less COVID restrictions, and we can make the event even bigger and better than it was for its first year.
Yeah, it looked like a lot of fun. It was awesome to see that many things out on the river, that many boats out on the river. So love to see that we're finally, right, over the past few years, starting to get some real activity on the river and actually using it. So thanks a lot to Park and Rec for that. Okay, any other questions for Gentry about Park and Recs? Okay, thanks, Gentry. And I see Sean Jones from the Wichita Public Library is on here. So Sean, it's yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Before, I guess Gentry just hopped off, I was going to thank Park and Recreation. They donated four, or letting us borrow four picnic tables with umbrellas at the Advanced Learning Library. And that relationship has helped us reopen Reverie Coffee Roasters at the library after they've been shut down. They shut down when the library shut down back in March, and just finally reopened. So Gentry, if you can just pass along our thanks to Troy, that would be awesome.
Absolutely.
It was critical in getting us our Reverie Coffee Roasters back at the library. So I just have a few things to touch upon this evening. This week, the library is starting virtual programming. We were kind of late in the game with our virtual programs. We had a partnership with K-State Research and Extension for our fall gardening series, and we had a lot of great success with that program, and we learned a lot about what we need to know for virtual programs. So starting tomorrow, we're offering our own slate of virtual programs. All of these will be held on Zoom, and for a complete list, we're asking people to go to wichitalibrary.org/events. You can look at all of the offerings there and then register as well. And what we're doing is we're going to send an email to all participants the day before and the day of the program with all of the Zoom information. So you have all of the information in your inbox. And if for some reason participants don't receive that information, an email might be wrong or something like that in our system, just give us a call at the library, 261-8500, and we will make sure that you get that information. Two programs that we have coming up that I think are really fun. Next Thursday, September 24th, we're having Jeff Witherspoon with Consumer Credit Counseling do Saving Money on Daily Expenses. He will talk about tips on how you can reduce your spending on daily expenses to save more for your future. That'll be from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And then on Saturday, September 26th, we're hosting One Page Business Plan from 1 to 2:30 p.m. And that is through the Small Business Administration SCORE program. And that will show you the steps needed to build your own business plan, and will also connect you with great library resources that we have to help you start a successful small business. Another thing to note about our programs, some of them will be recorded, not all of them. So just go to the library's YouTube account, type in Wichita Public Library when you get to YouTube, and you'll see all of the programs that we are recording there. One really important thing that I want to touch upon is the census. So we've partnered with the Census Bureau this year, and we're trying to remind as many community members as possible how important it is that everyone completes the census this year. The final day to complete the census has been moved up instead of back like everything else has been this year to September 30th, 2020. So we only have a couple of weeks left to complete the census. It only takes a few minutes, and all of your information is safe and confidential. You can go to 2020census.gov, or you can complete it by phone or by mail. The census provides critical data that lawmakers, business owners, teachers, and many others use to provide daily services, products, and support for you and your community. And every year, billions of dollars in federal funding go to hospitals, fire departments, schools, libraries, roads, and other resources on census data. So just remind as many people as you can to complete the census. Your community will benefit from it. All of our communities will benefit from it. And then one final thing I just want to talk about. I think the Business Journal wrote about it a couple of weeks ago, but this is our Director of Libraries, Cynthia Berner's last week. She is retiring after 20 years as the department director. She started with the Wichita Public Library in 1984 as the branch manager for the Westlink branch. And she has done a lot of amazing work in her 20 years as department director. So if you are familiar with Cynthia Berner, feel free to send her a note just to wish her a happy retirement. That's all I have.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
Questions for Sean? Like Linda, maybe?
I was wondering if there's a way to verify that they have received your I know I sent it in. Is there a way to know that, verify that they received it?
What was it, Linda? I think we didn't, you cut out there for a little bit. Did they receive?
The census packet.
Oh,
Is there a way?
I'm not sure. Let me do some research. I'll ask some of my coworkers who have been working more closely with the census, and I'll report back to Anna. I think there is a way to maybe check online that you have completed it, but I'll double check just to make sure I don't give you false information.
Okay. I just worried a little bit with all the mess they're having with the mail now. I don't know.
Yes, I'll double check that for you and I'll get back to Anna tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
thanks, Sean. Anything else for Sean? And Sean, maybe you said this, but I think out on your lawn where the umbrellas and picnic tables are, and on the second floor reading terrace, people can be out there social distance and they can take their masks off. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So the cafe is located inside the library, and we're still asking customers to wear masks while inside all of our library facilities. But we have reserved the outdoor reading terrace on the second floor in that south lawn. You're more than welcome to take your masks off, hang out with us, read a book, drink your pumpkin spice latte, and enjoy the library.
All right, thanks. Anything else for Sean? Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, now that we've got all the DAB members on, I want to do introductions. So I'll just I'll just say your first name, and if you will introduce, because we have some guests tonight, if you'll introduce yourself and what neighborhood you're from. So Linda, I'll start with you.
Okay. Linda Matney with La Placida Park neighborhood.
Thank you. Scott.
Lucas, I'm with Benjamin Hills.
Thank you. Bill L.
Bill Longnecker, Sunflower Neighborhood.
Thank you. Bill W.
I'm Bill Washburn. I'm with Sherwood Glen.
Thank you. Angela.
Angela Martinez, El Pueblo.
Thank you. Sergio. Oh, he must have. Well, I'll come back to him. Greg.
Hi, Greg Boyajian, La Placida Park neighborhood.
Thank you. Melinda.
Melinda Kellogg, Orchard Park neighborhood.
Thank you. Sean.
Indian Hills, Riverbend.
Thank you. And James.
James Deckard, North Riverside.
And I'll try Sergio one more time. Oh, must not. Okay, did I get everybody that's on DAB? Didn't miss anybody. Okay, good deal. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here tonight. All right, so we are now moving into public agenda. We have no scheduled items on public agenda, but I do see that we have some people on the call who are not on the DAB. So is there anyone here that wants to speak about something that is not on our agenda, but they'd like to speak about that? Anybody on the call to do that? Okay, looks like we're good. We will move then to new business. And our first item of business is the food system master plan. And I think Anthony Seiler is here to give us a presentation.
Hey there. Thank you for having me guys tonight, and I will try to keep it short. My wife is a nurse at Wesley, and she's got held up at work. So I'm also our chief caretaker right now for our 6-month-old. So he's asleep right now, and we hope he stays that way, but apologize in advance if you hear any coos or screaming in the background. So I promise he's fine. So yeah, like Member Claycomb said, my name is Anthony Seiler. I'm the executive director at Sedgwick County Farm Bureau. We're a association of farm and ranch families in Sedgwick County. We represent about a little under 900 families at last count. And I actually live in Delano with my wife, and we're just on the north side of Douglas. So we're in District 6. And I grew up going to school and church at St. Jude on North Amidon too. So been a long time associated with this part of town. It's really a pleasure to be with you all tonight. And thank you to the DAB members for the service that you do too. I know these volunteer committees are a time commitment, and thanks for representing those of us who live in your area. So to move on to the master plan, I just want to give you some information tonight about what it is, what we're doing, and then how we can, how we're looking for feedback from the community, and how, if you're interested, you can help us with that. So, you know, I guess we've been doing this now for almost a year, it seems like, since the steering committee convened to start working on our master plan. You're probably familiar, our community uses these as a way to do 5 and 10-year planning. So we have these for everything from housing to aquatics to our park system. And it seems obvious, I guess, that we all depend on food. And this is one of these primary you know, modes of importance for us. But to this point, the city had nothing, the county had no sort of formal plan for how to build this ecosystem. So that's what we've been working on. See if I have. Anna, could you advance 2 slides? Thank you. Cool. So the one that we skipped over there, if you're interested, the city did an awesome job, their communications team, putting together a explanation video of the whole process. So if you want, you can go afterwards, and that'll clean up any mistakes I make during this. So basically, the food system master plan itself, we've broken it into essentially 8 potential buckets of work that we can work on. That's everything from fostering economic growth through additional entrepreneurship to increasing access to healthy foods in our food deserts in the inner city, to things like sustainable use of natural resources and reducing food waste. So there's a huge amount of ways this touches the lives of every Wichitan, whether you're trying to get into business, or you're running a restaurant, or you're just a consumer. So we can go ahead and advance one more. And I guess to make the pitch of why this matters, especially in a time like this, during the pandemic that we've been going through, in this unusual time we've been living through, I think we've really seen the need of having a robust and a reliable food supply chain. Beyond that too, from my interest working for Sedgwick County farm families, we consume a tiny portion of the food that we grow in Sedgwick County. And so there's we're really good at growing commodities, things that we grow in bulk and ship to other folks for processing, or if we send across the oceans to other consumers. But if we got a little bit better at growing stuff to eat here locally, there is a tremendous market opportunity. So we spend just over $1.6 billion on food in 2018. So there's a huge amount of potential there, because we're consuming a tiny amount of the vegetables and fruit that could be grown in this area. The other thing, I think, as a central Wichita resident, is approximately 25% of Wichitans don't have access to healthy food. In my neighborhood here in Delano, that's definitely the case. We've got a couple of nice Dollar Generals down the street and a Brahms, and we're grateful to have those things. But there is definitely a lack of fresh produce in our area here. So these are all the kind of questions that a master food plan can wrestle with. The question is, though, this is an infinite problem in some ways. And so it's a matter of how do we prioritize how our community uses resources to help make this ecosystem more robust and to serve each other better. We can go ahead to the next one. So again, this is kind of growing out on that. Again, the city's comms department has been a wonderful partner through this process, putting together infographics like this one, kind of talking about the different actors, whether it's individuals, our governments, institutions like our schools, from food producers to retailers. So, hopefully the goal of this plan is that we develop a document that can help guide the city and county in making decisions about how to engage all of these stakeholders and move it forward. We can go ahead and skip the next. Go one more slide down. So timelines obviously been interrupted with COVID. Originally, the plan was to have this whole thing wrapped up by this winter / fall, and the pandemic hit right during the middle of our public engagement swing, and obviously that's hard to do when you can't have events. And so, taking some time got our grant extended, figured out how to to move this down the road a little bit. So we're still in the community engagement phase. That looks like going to community meetings like the DAB meetings, to different stakeholders and presenting about the master plan and sharing ways to be involved and give feedback. We've also had, I'll get onto this next slide too, but we've had a series of stakeholder input sessions on each of these major 8 buckets that we've been working on. There's 2 coming up soon here, which are going to be based around access to healthy food and fostering social equity. If you're a stakeholder in that space, if you have, if you're an issue expert in that area, you feel like, we'll let you self-certify that. Please RSVP to Tammy Creer at ymcawichita.org. And we would love to have folks' feedback. During this one will be virtual. The first 3 were done before COVID happened. So we are trying to wrap up that process. Once our community engagement phase is done, the steering committee is going to take all that feedback, collate it, and work on that final document to present to the city and county commission hopefully for approval early in 2021. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So if you would like to be involved, we would really welcome that. For this to be successful, we really need to hear from, all sorts of Wichitans, all neighborhoods, all communities, all backgrounds. So the easiest and first way to do this is go to wichita.gov/foodplan and take the community-wide survey. Share your experiences, your priorities, how you'd like to see our resources used to address these issues. On that website, you can see the video that I mentioned earlier. You can get more information about the food plan and the work that's been done so far. And you can also share additional comments outside of the survey. And you can find out information on further community meetings too. So I think that's everything. Oh, and sorry, I also wanted to add too that that survey and the information on the website is both in English and Spanish. So I guess my ask for y'all is, if you haven't already, please visit the website and take the survey. That really is really important for us to have that snapshot of the city as a whole and our communities. And then share it with your friends, your neighbors, other folks and organizations that you're involved with. If you have, and I should say that, so that's the first thing, is the survey and helping spread news about that. The second thing would be, if you have specific passion for any of these issues surrounding the food plan, we would really welcome those conversations. As members of the steering committee, we've been trying to engage our networks throughout the city to have those kind of in-depth one-on-one conversations. And so if you're somebody that cares about these things, but you haven't had a link to it yet, I am totally happy to visit with people or take questions now. But if hopefully you have, if you have more in-depth thoughts or ideas, I'm really happy to connect with you. And Anna can get you my contact information, or Tammy's, or anybody else that's on the steering committee. Our contact information is on that website as well. So really thank you for the time. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take those too, but I certainly don't want to hold you guys up tonight either. So thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. Questions for Anthony? I think if, as Anthony said, he lives in a food desert. Probably some of you live in a food desert or know neighbors that live in a food desert. I know that's just a piece of what they're doing, but I think it becomes very important. So make sure that you've gone out and filled out their survey at wichita.gov/foodplan. It's a pretty simple little survey, doesn't take too long. So I'd really encourage you to do that. Questions, anything for Anthony before we let him go? Oh, Bill Longnecker, yes. Oh, you're muted, Bill. You're still muted, Bill.
You're talking about food. Okay, you're talking about food deserts. I mean, and we're talking about getting really different real estate properties, distribution of them. These food deserts, we had Walmart pull out of 2 sites in the city, one of them on 13th and Oliver in the old Kenmar. Did a nice job of investing in that, landscaping, parking, and they were there for only 3 years and they pulled out. And then you have Walmart and Dillon's like right across the street from each other in some areas. Sometimes they both survive. Other times one of them leaves and you got another big box. I noticed Kansas Food Bank was perhaps a point of distribution, but I mean, how are you going to get these different retailers involved, especially when they're carrying their own name brands, and there's nothing to prevent them as far as the city goes in regards to pulling out and just leaving us.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I think that's one of these are hard questions too. I think that's the first thing to say. There's a reason why these lacks exist in our communities, and they're not easy to address. I would say too, that's one of the things that we need to know is where do people feel these pain points. That's another reason to take the survey. And part of the hope here too is if we can foster a more robust food production system in Sedgwick County. Like right now, I forget what the number was, but it's like less than half of a percent of the food that we consume in Sedgwick County is grown here. So that's a way that you can get around this reliance on just a big box store or a Kroger. If there's more local ownership of those food systems, you're on retailers. But the other thing to say too is, as part of this, to try to engage with those retailers too, to get their and feedback as well. Things are likely to develop and leave, and there are things that we can do to address that, I guess, as well.
It was cutting out there. Didn't get all that.
Yeah, towards the end,
Froze.
Yeah. Oh, busy froze.
Yep.
Oh. I think he's frozen on us.
Who's
Sorry,
that?
can you guys hear me there? My internet flipped out there for a second.
You're back now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Wonderful AT&T internet here in downtown Wichita. But I was going to say, I think maybe where you lost me, the last thing I said too is through this process too, another thing that we're trying to do is engage with those kind of big box stores, the Dillons of the world, to make sure that we understand what causes them to make a business decision like pulling out of a neighborhood, and that we're not doing anything that would inadvertently make that more likely to happen. So just trying to look at that from a lot of different angles. So if you've got ideas and feedback on this, please visit the survey, add additional comments, or reach out to me too. Happy to visit in greater depth, because I'm certainly not an expert on food deserts, but we're trying to learn as much as we can and get the right people in the room to have those conversations.
One more question.
Absolutely.
Have you found other examples of what you're striving to do in other cities or county cities?
For sure. Locally, Douglas County, I think, has the most interesting one in Kansas. They did theirs about 5 or 10 years ago, I want to say now. And it looks different probably than what our goal is. It is just a throw everything at the wall and see what sticks kind of plan. But as a result of that, they got a lot of new initiatives done. And it's not changing the world or going out and making, huge, massive investments, but it's finding little things that can be fixed in our community that we've just been overlooking because we've not been thinking of it as a large scale whole. I'm trying to think I know the one that I have the most familiarity with is Douglas County's. But I think the KC metro area also has a sort of plan like this. And, another one that we looked at was Tulsa too. And I can't remember, I think there are probably links on that website to some of these other ones. If not, I would definitely recommend going and looking up Douglas's, because I know theirs is on the website.
Thank you.
Anthony, locally, are there any good examples of community gardens?
In our area, like District 6?
No, just Sedgwick County in general.
Yeah, that's a great question that I don't have the expertise on, actually. I know both at Extension and, there's another non-for-profit that is on the steering committee whose name is escaping me right now. One is in the name. I can't remember the rest of it. We're both working to try and foster community gardens and support and establish. But outside of the ones that I walk by when we're going on walks with the kid in the stroller, I don't know probably where the ones to highlight are. If you wanted to reach out though, I'm happy to find that answer and get it back to you. I know the folks who would know.
Scott, a couple that I know of. There's one in Riverside Park. It's right at the corner basically of Bidding and River Boulevard, but it's the street, not where you take it's not River Boulevard, it's the street that's the other part of the V on that, which I can never remember what the name of that one is. And Riverside has done an amazing job because community gardens are hard. They're really difficult to do, but they have found a way to make theirs sustainable. So that's a really good one. And then I know there's one down in District 3 by Garvey Park. And I don't know very much about that one, but I know I see it and I see people out there, and it's one that's been going for quite a long time. There are examples of ones in the cities that have not done so well. They, last a season and then can't seem to be sustainable. But Anthony might be able to find some other ones, but those are the two I know of. Anybody else know of ones in the city?
Vice Mayor Claycomb, I believe Greg has his hand up. He might have a question or a comment.
Okay, Greg?
Yeah, this is a little bit new to me, so I'm wondering, and may be true with other DAB members. So can we revisit this again in 6 months? This topic? I mean, gain knowledge and then have it come back, because it's very difficult to ask questions or make comments without having knowledge, wisdom, or understanding on the full subject.
Would your group be willing to come back, Anthony, to kind of give us an update?
Absolutely. And, our hope is that the steering committee process is getting close to wrapping up in 6 months, that we've got some sort of product to produce by then. But I'll say I got involved in this work through the Health and Wellness Coalition of Wichita, which is led by the YMCA. And we have a subcommittee on food in that group. I think that's the official name of it. And that group has been active in this and would be, either as part of the steering committee or as part of that group. We'd be happy to come back and visit more about this. I think it's a really important issue. And I'll also echo your comment on the Riverside community garden it's almost like too excellent. I think that I've been around there and they do a great job and it looks beautiful. It's like the impossible dream of what community gardens are, I think. So, but I'll talk to my friends at Extension too. And I know that they have a much better handle on where those resources are in our city already and can get some information back to you all about that.
Sounds good. So we'll ask Anna to put that on our to-do list that in 6 months we'll have you come back. And I'll just reiterate, if you go out and fill out that wichita.gov/food plan, look for the survey. The survey, it takes no technical knowledge. It just asks you about your life. And your thoughts. So certainly go out and fill that out because it really feeds information into this group. And even like things that you don't know, that's important to this group to know that. So make sure you go out and fill that out. Anything?
I'll also say too, the survey is really designed to help you think through the ways in which our food system as a community touches your lives. So there are probably things that I forgot to mention tonight, I'm sure, that'll come up in that survey and you're like, oh, I never thought of that being important to me, but that totally affects how I live my life or go about it.
Anything else for Anthony?
Yeah, I'd like to springboard off something that Scott started the discussion on. And as Greg mentioned, I'm kind of in the dark on this. I haven't thought about it too much, but I believe, don't just think, I believe that if a coalition were established between the city of Wichita with idle property, the Sedgwick County Extension Office, and the Kansas Forestry Commission, that community gardens could be a better process proposed to or encouraged by neighborhood associations. So if the information was out there, if those three entities at least were, I think, engaged collectively and desirous of making something happen on community gardens, it'd be a real asset. I think in our neighborhood, we'd probably be more apt to pay attention. just starting some up from scratch is tough.
It is, and that's why a lot of them have failed. It's just, I've had people call me and say, hey, I think you ought to put a community garden over on this lot. And I'm like, happy to do that. Who would like to advocate for that? And I never.
Well, Cindy, why don't you do that? Yeah.
You do that. And I'm like, well, I have a lot of things to do right now. So, but I think that's I think that's good feedback, Bill, about, I think those partnerships become important in these sorts of things. And that's a lot of how Riverside has done theirs. They got someone to donate the land. They got the Girl Scouts to do this. They got the Boy Scouts to do this. They got someone to provide water. Water's one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
If you don't have water, right, you can't grow plants. So they've just worked really hard to establish their own partnerships, but it's done through partnerships to be able to create that really successful garden. All right. Anything else for Anthony? Anthony, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to someone coming back in about 6 months to give us an update.
Wonderful. Look forward to it. Thank you all so much for your time this evening.
Thank you. All right. Next item. Dave, I see Dave Yearout is with us, and he's going to present our zoning case tonight.
Good evening. Welcome. And this is going to be a repeat in many respects of what we've seen a lot of, because we have we've had a lot of these types of cases come in lately of infill lots, single family. The owner is basically responding to the reality of in our marketplace right now that the only real economic way to create an infill is for a duplex. And under the current zoning code, rezoning is what they need to do. And this particular property on Anna, just south of Central, was heard last Thursday, the 10th, at the MAPC. There were no objections from anyone. It did receive a unanimous recommendation for approval. This particular case has, just as the issue is with several of the others that we have seen lately, is a protective overlay that's proposing to have the standards and requirements that are kind of built out of what the Places for People plan talked about for infill development for duplexes and two-family in established neighborhoods. The applicant was a participant on Thursday, agreed to the conditions, is indicating they're working on a design to meet one of the objectives that we're trying to achieve, which is to not have more than 50% of the front facade facing the street be garage doors. So we're anxious to see how that comes out, but he was okay with that. This particular applicant also has a similar project going in District 4 that's being heard tonight at their DAB meeting. Same applicant, what's his name here? Kirk Apex. He is doing it. He has a different LLC on that location, but it's the same individual, and he was okay with both of them. So they did both receive a recommendation of approval. We're in the protest period right now. We're reviewing these with DABs, and it's moving forward. So I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody's got.
Questions for Dave from the DAB.
I've got a list of them. I'm sorry. I guess do you have any information or know where it could be gathered to determine what the ratio of putting these duplexes in that are rentals versus like a twin home where it's ownership?
No, we don't get that information, and to my knowledge, they don't get that information when it comes in for building permits either.
I guess that's what concerns me a little bit is proliferation of rental units in a neighborhood that may have primarily home ownership.
Well, and, you know, of course, we also have not run the trap line to determine the percentage of existing single-family homes in these neighborhoods that are renter occupied, which is
Right.
many times quite more than 50%. And, you know, there are ways to kind of check that out, but we don't run that trap line either. And we don't really have any distinction to draw within the zoning code, pros or cons from a land use standpoint of what it is. So those questions come up, and when we have neighborhood opposition, we hear that often. But then, you know, usually many times what comes out is that, well, are you aware that, you know, X percentage of the neighborhood around this is already renter occupied? And they're going, well, no, I didn't know that. So I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, and I know that's a concern of many neighborhoods, but we see that all over the city. In the older part of the city, you see a lot of existing homes that become rental occupants over time, and
the trend, I guess. One of the other concerns I had in looking at the top view, I'll call it, of the property is the extremely limited amount of, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call green space. The lot seems to be so small that the construction is going to eat it up. There's not going to be anything left.
well, then they've got to comply with the setbacks and the other requirements on the lot, which would be the same as somebody built a house there. Yeah, these are not large lots. We understand that. I think to a certain extent, these were like 50-foot lots. So by the time you drop the building on there, you're not going to have a lot of space on either side, but it's the same as what's required for a single family home. So there's no reduction in setbacks, and we don't have a restriction on the overall lot coverage of the building. And obviously part of what you get eaten up is driveways and concrete. So that's, you know, these lots don't have alley access. So when you're coming off the street, even the single family homes have the same problem. So.
Hey, Bill, I'm gonna follow up on your question. I know you have more questions, but I saw in the staff report that it says, I think, Dave, what you're saying, that the proposed site plan, it only shows a 20 foot front setback, and that's not permitted. So all of those things will be worked out before anything can be built there, correct?
Yeah, they have to comply with it. When, you know, the approval is not to grant a waiver or rejection of that. They still have to meet the setback requirements.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so
I appreciate that, and that's the legal approach from a setback standpoint and the regulations. But again, my concern, you know, if I were a resident there, is the total, well, not total, but the extremely limited amount of, I guess I'd call it owned green space. And the fact that I think, and Melinda would have to chime in on this, but I think the closest recreational area is probably Orchard Park. So I'll open the floor back up. That's the end of my comments.
Bill Longnecker.
Well, you mentioned the protective overlay, and it should be noted that a protective overlay has to be more restrictive than the base zoning development standards. So what this protective overlay has done is put additional design and material standards on this site for a site that's slightly over 6,000 square feet, which is the minimum size for a duplex. And, you know, green lawn is always good to have, but again, the protective overlay is putting more restrictions in regards to how the duplex is going to look in regards to materials and how much the face, and it still meets the minimum requirements in regards to setbacks and easements, but adds additional restrictions in regards to development of that. And as far as, you know, the problem with, in my mind, hearing cases about duplexes is a lot of concern about the ability and the inclination of the property owner to maintain that property because they're absentee. But again, as Dave pointed out, there's a lot of single family homes that are rental properties, which is permitted. And even if you own your home, you know, the individual, it's up to them to maintain that property, and whatever their inclination or ability is to maintain that property varies according to the individual. Unless, of course, you're in a neighborhood that's got restrictive covenants that's going to hold your feet to the fire on that. And most of the District 6 is not a covenant type neighborhood. That's just an observation, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you both, Bills. All right. Any other questions from the DAB for Dave? Okay. So hearing.
Yes, one question. This is Gregory, I did not make an attempt to look at the property or the street that it was on. My question is Anna a paved street?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Good
Thank
question. Okay, thanks. Bill Washburn, I think you had another question.
Well, I just wondered if Melinda had any thoughts or comments on this. It's her area, isn't it?
A little south. I'm in Orchard Park, and that looks like it's an Orchard Breeze.
Yeah.
Which is south of me. I mean, I would agree with what Bill Longnecker has said. I mean, I have neighbors that, I mean, I believe they own the houses nearby me, and they don't take care of their lawns any better than, so just because you own a home doesn't necessarily mean that, and just because you rent a property doesn't mean that you're not going to take care of it. So it's kind of, as long as they're following kind of the guidelines, I don't see an issue with it unless the neighbors, obviously I want to listen to the neighbors, but if he's saying there's no neighbors that have concerns so far.
Anything else from the DAB? Okay, anything from anyone sitting on the call that's not on the DAB? We have a couple people. Anything? All right, I'll bring it back to the DAB, and I would entertain more discussion, questions, or a motion.
Motion to approve with the protective overlay.
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved by Bill Longnecker, seconded by Melinda. Any further discussion? Okay, Anna, could you please call the roll?
Bill Longnecker,
Aye.
Angela Martinez,
Aye.
William Washburn,
Aye.
Gregory Boyajian,
Aye.
James Deckard,
Aye.
Scott Lucas.
Aye.
Thank you. Linda Matney,
Aye.
Sean Rojas.
Aye.
Thank you. And Sergio Deborah Nájera.
I think Sergio's left us.
Okay, so let's
No,
go
I'm
ahead
here.
Okay.
Okay.
Sergio, what is your vote?
Yay.
Here he is.
Thank you. And Melinda Kellogg.
Aye.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Is that 10-0?
That is 10-0, Vice Mayor Claycomb. Correct.
Thank you all very much. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate
Thank you.
you. See you next time.
Yes, ma'am. I look forward to it.
Okay. All right. Our next item is let's talk downtown streets. And I saw that Scott Wadle has joined us. Yes, there he is. Okay. I knew I saw him. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Scott.
All right. Hello, everybody. So really my main purpose here tonight is to ask you to please go and take the survey, participate in the social media town hall, maybe stop by Century 2 and check out the boards. We have some really interesting concepts that are out for downtown streets, and we're just looking to get a lot of feedback on them to find out if we're headed in the right direction or whether we need to make some tweaks or adjustments. So any and all feedback would be fantastic. But besides just giving you that quick message, I also wanted to take an opportunity to kind of refresh you on what it is and where we've been and where we're going with this. The PowerPoint slides, I probably won't spend a lot of time on every single slide. I'll try and go through it pretty quick, but please raise your hand or let me know if a question comes up and we can certainly get that taken care of. So Anna, if we can go ahead and go to the next slide, we'll go ahead and get rolling here. Okay, so we'll talk again about the purpose, about collecting input. We'll talk a little bit about the timeline, where we've been, where we're going. We'll talk about the process and then a quick overview on the concepts. Next slide, please. So the purpose, next slide. Again, it's to let you know about the survey. We've got a poster that we've got put together. Here's the actual view of the survey. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes and you'll see the different concepts. You have a chance to say what you like, what you don't like about it, all that good stuff. So please take the survey, share it with your friends. Next slide. If you want more information, we've got a number of documents. Go to wichita.gov/downtown streets. You can see different reports, different public input that's been provided, and reports also on the public input we've received so far. Next slide, please. So the timeline, next slide. And these are a little bit off because of COVID, but in general, we went out to the DABs. We've done a number of different things, but most recently we went out to the DABs in February. In March, we were going to have a big open house, kind of traditional planning thing where you get everyone together. That was canceled. I think we were one second or third event that got canceled due to COVID. So this September and October, we're working on collecting public input without a big get together, and that's going to be through the survey, through social media. And for those who don't have access to the internet or prefer not to, we do have stations set up in Century 2. So it's quite a big space and you can wander from station to station. And then later on, we hope to have a draft plan that have been updated later on this year. Overview and process, next slide. So again, the downtown streets plan, what do we mean when we're talking about downtown streets? It's really the boundaries are Murdoch down to Kellogg, Washington, over to the river / McLean. And there's some areas where we've done more work than in some others, and we'll talk a little bit about why in just a moment. Next slide, please. So in terms of the planning process, is typical planning process where we look at where we are today. We've done lots of reports about existing conditions. We talk to folks. We collect input through a variety of different means to find out what they think about today and also what they think about future goals and what our aspirations should be. And then we start working on designs. And this is kind of an iterative thing where we come up with a design, we collect feedback on it, we make adjustments, and we move forward. So that's where we are currently. Next slide. Our streets have evolved over time. They are not the way today that they were, a number of decades ago. They continuously evolve. And so what we're asking today is we're asking the question, how should our streets complement and help us to achieve community goals that we have today, both today and into the future? Oh. So those are the questions. Yeah, there's some really fun photos out there. Streets have just changed, in some cases, a lot, just in, 50, 60 years or more. Next slide, please. So in terms of the feedback that we received, we took that, we looked at it, and there were a number of goals that were really emerging out of this. People want health and they want safety. They want streets that contribute to that. They want streets that contribute to mobility, right? A variety of different mobility options, including active transportation. They want infrastructure and streets that maximize our value, right? In terms of infrastructure and better and good management of it. They also want to see technology and innovation used when possible to meet community goals. And then they want streets that help foster consistent economic investment and promote vibrant downtown neighborhoods, right? So hopefully these are all things that resonate with you. Next slide.
Before you jump over,
Yeah,
You gave me license, so I'm going to take advantage of it.
go for it. Go for it.
On that previous slide, the innovation and technology, can you give me some ideas? Is this something as straightforward as timing all the lights, or what are you thinking?
Bingo, that's one of them. There's also innovations that not necessarily deal with electronics, but I know in the bicycle realm, there's been a lot of innovation recently in terms of how you design a bike lane, where you place it on the street, what kind of physical barriers you can put in. We've seen cities even experimenting with rubber stop blocks, right? Like in a parking space, and they put those in along the bike lane. Or now there's companies coming out with all kinds of inventions to kind of help meet these needs. And it's going to continue to happen, both in terms of street design, the infrastructure and the materials that you can put out there, and the technology with the lights and the wires and the gizmos too. So, and the other thing too is not only that about the infrastructure, but also the vehicles and the types of things that are out there. I mean, there's scooters are out there. There's self-driving buses, and there's bicycles that have electric batteries and electric assist. So things are constantly evolving. And then what about driverless cars, right? And where do they park? Where do they stop? We didn't quite get in there because I think everyone can see some of these things coming down the road, but they're just not sure when they're going to emerge, right? One of the things that we've heard from a national expert was he said, I've worked with these multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar companies, and they're not building garages right now. They're hedging their bets because they're not quite sure when this technology is going to come out. They know they need parking now, so they're using it as parking lots, but they're, so, I mean, it's a dynamic area, and there's a lot of change happening.
Okay, thanks.
And that's not a comment to say that garages are bad. It's just necessarily, it depends on the location and economics. So I just want to get that.
Yeah.
All right. So in terms of where we've been, 2019 was a really busy year. So we kicked off with a meeting at Distillery 244, probably, I think about 100 people, maybe a little bit more, were there in Old Town to learn about downtown streets, talk about it. April, we did some charrettes, specifically with Douglas, and an open house there. And it touched on downtown streets. In June, there was a Riverfest. There was an open house and a charrette series of events that took place. It was like a week-long series of events. In September, we did a booth over at Open Streets. And we did a number of different stakeholder meetings. One of the things about this process is that we've had larger public events, and you can see some pictures here, but also a lot of it has been going to the businesses and the stakeholders in a particular corridor and talking about how that corridor looks today and how it might look in the future, and going over options with them. So we have tried to, get people together as big groups, get lots of input, but also have small focus groups or stakeholder meetings to talk with businesses and such. So a variety of different means to collect input. Next slide, please. So now we've talked a little bit about the reason why I'm here tonight. We've talked about the process that we've used to kind of get to this point. We'll talk a little bit more about that again, but right now we'll move into the section on the concepts. And I'm not going to present all the concepts because there's way too many of them to talk about tonight, but just know that there's a few, and we'll go through a couple of examples so you can see them. So one of the things that we did was, again, what do we have today? So this is the existing street network. And the unique thing about this project is that we're not just looking at one corridor. It gives us an opportunity to look at the whole network. So how many lanes, what direction, does it have on-street parking, does it have bike lanes? All that good stuff is contained in this map if you zoom in and look at it. Again, available online so you can zoom in and actually take time to read it. Next page, next slide. We looked at transit service and where are the transit routes currently going, where are the buses going. We looked at bicycles and the bicycle facilities, where are they? So you can see that presented here. In the transit center, what's interesting, because there's a combination of the transit center and the one-way streets, you end up with this kind of pinwheel design as you see the buses circulating to get in and out of the station. Next slide, please. Then we looked at daily traffic. So how much, the traffic volumes on a given street, how many are there in terms of average daily traffic counts. Next slide. And then we looked at the traffic counts, and then we looked at also how are the streets configured, how many lanes are there, because generally you can tell how much traffic a street can handle by how many lanes there are. And so combining those two, we were able to say, well, it's got capacity for this much, but really utilization and vehicles per day traveled is down here. So that gap tells us when there are opportunities to make changes to the roadway. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that is what's in the concepts, but it just told us where there were opportunities. And we'll, again, talk more about that. But, let's go back real quick on one more quick point on this is if you look down, for instance, at Washington and Kellogg, it's at the far bottom right corner. You'll see that it's orange. That segment tells us that that's probably not a good candidate for making any changes to. And I think that if you're out there and you look at it at rush hour, you'll see that's kind of the case. If you look at the yellow sections, those are areas where there could be changes, but we've got to be very thoughtful, very considerate about what we do there. So possibility. And the green are areas where there's a lot of excess capacity, so a lot of opportunity. Next,
So,
yeah,
on that map, from my personal experience, that intersection of Washington and Douglas,
yes,
that's an ugly bugger.
And we'll talk a little bit about that. I personally have ideas, but what we'll talk about is we'll talk about some road diets, and I think that there's an opportunity there. So let's talk more in depth about that intersection. Let's bring it up just a little bit. So next slide. And in fact, this is a great opportunity to do that. So we've done a number of road diets here in town. They haven't always been ones that are high profile, but they certainly make a big difference. And generally a road diet, generally what occurs is you go from a 4-lane to a 3-lane is the most prevalent kind that there is. And the thinking, I think, behind a 4-lane in the first place was that it's more lanes, right? So it's more than 3, so it's got to move more vehicles. But in fact, what we find is that in a lot of cases, a 3-lane can move just as many, if not more vehicles. And the reason why is if you ever drive central between Hillside and Oliver during rush hour, or even Douglas, but more central, you will find this is that cars stop in the center lane to make a left turn, and it's super dangerous because cars are running down the road trying to get home. They don't see the brake lights in front of them. You see them at the last instance. The other thing that happens is you end up with 2 cars making left-hand turns, right? They're both going opposite, and they both have to play a game of chicken, and the cars next to them don't see them, and they can result in a T-bone. And I saw numerous crashes out on Central when I lived on Fountain. And it's not just anecdotal data. The statistics show that these are 4-lane configurations are not really great at moving cars. They're also really bad when it comes to crash statistics. If you don't have a lot of left turns, you can make it work, but 3 lanes have way better safety statistics. In examples also where that's happened, it's happened on Waco recently. If you think about Town East, it happened on Armour right next to Town East. Think about Hydraulic, it happened on Hydraulic south of Douglas. So there's a number of places where we've done these and they've had a big impact, but they're not really, some of them aren't really prominent. Other things that were looked at in terms of concepts for downtown streets was 1-way and 2-way. I know you all have probably had these conversations before. There's trade-offs. There's not that one answer, just like with 3-lane and 4-lane, there's not one right answer, but there are trade-offs, and it's a matter of which ones are going to get you to where your community goals are, right? So a 1-way is really good at moving a lot of traffic relatively quickly. Part of the challenge with a 1-way is that it results in higher speeds, and those higher speeds can have some pretty substantial adverse effects depending on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to move traffic, 1-ways can be great. It can also be helpful for pedestrians because they only have to look one direction generally, not always, but generally. The speed issue, though, means that you've got louder noises. The vehicles going by are louder. They're also faster. So it's more difficult to have a patio and have a restaurant out there. It's difficult to have commerce and kind of gathering spots where people want to hang out. And the other thing, too, is that because the speeds are higher, if someone gets into a crash, it's more severe. So you may not, and they actually have better safety statistics in terms of number of crashes, but when a crash occurs on a 1-way street because of the speed, it's more likely to be more severe or, fatality, etc. The other thing too is that it's circuitous for people. If you pass your destination, you have to go a long way out of your way, go around the block to try and get back to it. It's also unfamiliar for people from out of town. I mean, I probably sound like your relatives that visit downtown Wichita once or twice and they're like, oh my gosh, but The two-way streets, there's advantages there in that it's easier to get to your destination. It's more intuitive. People don't get lost as much. It also results in slower speeds, which can be a negative if you're trying to get through quickly, but can be a positive if you're trying to reduce the severity of crashes. If you want to create an environment where you can have patios and more outdoor functions, two ways can really help with that. So those are just a quick overview. You'll see more about how this comes into play in just a moment. Yeah, just saw an email about that. I'm still working on that, Councilmember Claycomb, so I hope to get that out soon. We looked at examples from other cities, right? Fortunately, the team that we were working with had experience working in other cities. We're familiar with them. This is one in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They actually converted from a 4-lane from one-way to two-way. They saw some benefits, but they didn't really see that it was achieving the goals that they wanted ultimately, or to the degree that they wanted. So then they did a road diet later on. They came back 15 years later and did a road diet and really saw things start to happen along that corridor after they did that. So you can see that sometimes this is an iterative process, right? It doesn't all have to happen at once. Next slide, please. Greenville, South Carolina is an example. I've not had the fortune to go there, but people cite this a lot in textbooks because they did it so early. They started looking at their streets and the way they were designed back in the 1970s. They made a lot of changes when people were really going the other direction. They did a lot of changes to calm traffic and go to two-way streets, etc. And today you can see apparently a lot of shops, a lot of pedestrian environments. It's apparently paid off quite well for them. Next slide, please. So what we're looking at here is we're not looking at how can we make downtown Wichita into one big traffic jam. What we're looking at instead is really, okay, if we have excess capacity and if you can get a speeding ticket in downtown during rush hour, then is there a possibility of creating a little bit more delay in traffic speeds and result in big gains in livability and in business and economic vibrancy, right? Those are the kind of the factors that we're looking at. And again, this comes to us from the goals that people have told us are the goals: safety, economic vitality. You'll notice that in the goals, people didn't mention speed, right? Like they don't want to go faster, right? So these are some of the things we're looking into. And really, this is the opportunity during the survey and the boards and all that stuff is to get the feedback about whether or not we're on the right course or whether we need to make a change in tack. So next slide, please. So here are the goals. Again, just to reiterate on here. So again, we weren't hearing, gee, I wish I could get through downtown faster, or gosh, if I could just get to the east side of home and I could cut my commute by another 20 seconds, life would just be great for me. We're hearing quite the opposite, which is safety, other modes of transportation, more economic vibrancy. So this, how to conceptualize it, right? Next slide, please. So we talked about the existing conditions. This is one that shows the potential, just a concept really of the entire network. I'm not going to go in depth about this, but I do want to acknowledge that in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see the blued out gray area. That's the area where the Riverfront Legacy Master Plan process was going on and is going on. And so we did not really do a lot of in-depth work over there because of the concepts and how fluid that was. Also, on the right-hand side, you'll see a comment about signalization work. This is an initiative that the city's had underway for quite some time, and there's a lot of progress that is happening even today in terms of contracts and design work. So just to acknowledge that that is stuff that's taking place. It's going to have a big impact also on traffic flow and safety in and around downtown. Next slide, please. The other thing to note is that as part of this process, as it's been going on, there's a lot of great things going on in downtown, a lot of redevelopment, a lot of new development happening. And so the question is really, how can we take concepts for streets that will help promote and enhance and synergize with that development that's taking place? We don't want to, for instance, have a building that's under construction and the ribbon cutting happens and then we move in with the orange cones and shut down the street in front of it. Like that would not be a great situation. Or if we're not coordinated with, how's the parking garage? How does the entrance work? If we convert it to if we look at a concept for a two-way street, is that going to cause some problems? That kind of stuff. So we're trying to see some synergy here. The other thing too is just there's a lot of synergy in terms of safety enhancements, because there have even been companies that have been downtown and have said our biggest issue is our employees getting in crashes as they're trying to get around for lunch, right? So and it's a side note, but it's important when we start to talk about economic vitality and keeping businesses downtown and seeing investment too. Next slide, please.
You mentioned it, I don't know, 5-10 slides back, but change is coming. I'm not real nuts about it, but autonomous vehicles are going to be here, and they're going to be here strong, probably in 5 to 10 years, I guess, based on what I'm reading. So please be sure that you take that into account when high traffic or high density drop off and pick up areas like the Century, whatever's there, Century 2 for now, areas, so we can accommodate that, not have to go in and tear things out again.
That's an excellent comment. Part of this is really, this project is really focused on the configurations of the streets. Curbside management is going to become more and more important over a period of time, both in terms of parking, in terms of deliveries, and in terms of drop-offs. And the other thing to keep in the back of your mind is when we talk about autonomous vehicles, there could be some real benefits if the vehicles are shared and if they're dropping you off and then they go and they pick someone else. But it can be really bad if they're privately owned and they're not shared, in terms of my vehicle goes and drops me off and then my vehicle circulates downtown because it doesn't want to pay for parking, or I don't want to pay for parking, or where do they go if they're privately owned, right? And they're not shared. So there's a lot of discussion going on with this, and we'll see where it all goes. But it could substantially reduce our demand for parking and our need for parking and free up land for development, or it could create a situation where we have to think about how we do concentrated parking in areas. Sorry, a little bit too much about that, but things to think about. We also looked at the transit net. Oh, let's go back real quick to the other slide. We looked at the transit network, and this has come up before in other plans, but it resonated with this one, is focusing transit on Douglas and on Broadway. Doesn't mean that it won't be on other streets, but really looking at how can we use these core core corridors for transit service and promoting walkability, et cetera. We also looked at the bicycle network and how can we make it easier and more convenient and safer for folks to get through and around downtown. So next slide. One way to two way, we had a slide that talked about that. This is one that shows a map that shows where it's in the concepts. So Market in Topeka, you'll notice Emporia and Main Street and also English. What you will see is not on here though are 1st and 2nd Street. And part of that was just simply the size of those streets from curb to curb was part of the challenge. So now I know that for District 6 has ramifications as you get further north. And we did not look at extending it either north or south. And we know that those transitions will take some more detailed work. So again, this is at a conceptual level. And just like with Emporia, it was at a concept, and then we hired engineers and we did design work and we did design meetings with stakeholders and members of the public. We would anticipate a fairly similar process. It's not proposed as part of this. This is just really a concept in the plan at this stage. So I just want to point that out for y'all. Next slide. Emporia again is one that's underway. The TGC development, which is taking place at Douglas and Emporia, big brick building, very impressive. As part of that project, there was some money that was available for infrastructure improvements, and that is being used to help pay for the conversion of the street. Really, these conversions are relatively inexpensive when you consider that it's mostly to deal with paint and striping and signals. You really don't have to do a lot of concrete work, so it's relatively affordable compared to some other substantial roadway projects, right? So this one, again, is in the stage where the designs were reviewed by the public. There was lots of discussion, stakeholder input, and the engineering designs are now completed and they're moving on towards implementation. Next slide, please. Market in Topeka, you can see at the top the existing section. The current volume is 2,500 to 6,500 vehicles per day, and that really depends on what block you're looking at. The capacity in terms of the number of lanes is almost 10 times that in some cases. And so there's a lot of excess capacity that's not being utilized to the fullest extent. So there's a lot of possibility with this one, right? So the concept, and again, just to explore this, is to make it two-way, one lane in each direction to provide parking. And the thing to think about with these is that the intersections are going to be really critical, like making sure that we get the intersection design right, because that's where the turning cars are. That's where you really impact. And that gets back to Douglas, which is Douglas is a 4-lane configuration right now. And with that center left turn lane, I think the engineers have done the best they can with that. Sometimes it's a protected left, sometimes it's not. Because of the 4 lanes, it's just inherent that center lane is going to cause problems, right? And challenges, I should say. The dedicated 3-lane, and much like this, if you look at how you handle the intersections, it's really, really critical. So, next slide, please. We get into the details in this project of showing different dimensions. So this shows, for instance, Market in Topeka. You can see that at the top, and then the widths vary on Market in Topeka. Downtown streets, downtown in general, from curb to curb, the distance varies depending on which block you are on. And even in some instances, even mid-block, it changes. So we've mapped that out, and this is one of the concepts for it. A challenge with this is that Market and Topeka get really narrow further north. And so as you get closer to Murdoch, you run out of width. And so one of the things that we've had to revisit is how can we adjust and get some additional parking up there? And we've done it. It's not reflected on here. So our boards at Century 2, this is a little bit older PowerPoint, but our boards back at Century 2 will show that. So I just want to make you aware of that and show you the level of detail that you can see both on the website and at the Century 2 boards. Next slide, please. This one's English, similar thing. With this one, you can see that the width varies so much that we're able to go from parallel parking to angled parking, depending on where you're at. Next slide. Oh, and it's 2-way instead of 1-way. Douglas, I'm going to just pause here and just tell you that we received a lot of feedback about Douglas from some of the previous articles. And because of that, really the concept at this point is just to collect input on the current configuration. So that's what you're going to see in the survey. We're looking at more midterm, looking at pedestrian improvements for Douglas, keeping it the current configuration in downtown. And that's really where we're at, just based on public input and feedback. So the slide here and the next slide, really, I just want to skip over them. So next slide after this one too, we'll skip over this one. Broadway is, the concept would be to take it from a 4-lane to a 3-lane. One of the benefits about doing that is that with a 3-lane configuration, you can get a little bit wider lanes. And so if Broadway is going to be a focus for transit use, then that allows for the buses to get down the corridor a lot easier. The other thing too is that you're not really sacrificing safety in this instance because it's 1 lane in a direction. So speeding vehicles can't pass the pace car. You've got a pace car that's setting the pace of the lane. So yeah, overall, it still meets the traffic demands and enhances safety for everybody. Next slide.
So I guess the only comment I've got on these is I appreciate the vehicle per day metric, but what would concern me is making sure that we've got a real good analysis going on the peak periods.
Yes.
If we choke that down and impact peak hours, we're going to be in trouble.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we weren't able to delve into that no, I take that back. We did look at that. We had the consultants who were working with us. They got the traffic counts from engineering, and they did look at the peak traffic. The one area where they saw there was Washington and Kellogg was an issue. The other one that they were a little bit cautious of, but it still works, is at Main and Douglas at like 5 o'clock. So there were some small areas where there were points where we need to be conscientious about what we do. But I can tell you that we didn't see one of those on Douglas. So next slide, please. And I'm not saying we don't have to be conscientious about what we're doing on Douglas. I meant Broadway. But I'm just saying that we've got a little bit more room to maneuver with Broadway. Broadway, one of the unique things is that there's been a safety study that looked at Broadway north of Central. And again, the 3-lane safety benefits were just so great that that was recommended. But in addition, they recommended, the recommendation is for bike lanes as well. This would continue the bike lane south to 3rd Street and then go east-west on 3rd Street. And then south of that would just be 3 lanes on Broadway. So next slide then. Oh, and that's with parking on both sides for that block with the bike lanes too. We talked a little bit about this. This is the older schedule, but just know that we're out for public input right now in October and September and October. And then towards the end of the year, we hope to have revised concepts ready for advisory boards review and ultimately presentation to City Council for consideration. Next slide, please. Okay, fantastic. So that was everything. Just also a note, I know you all know this, but as part of any planning project, even if the City Council approves it or endorses it, it does not allocate funding. It does not program any immediate changes. That would have to take place through a separate process, programming of funding, review of designs, approval of a contract, approval of designs, issuing the bids, all of that stuff. So this is just really an opportunity to look at how's the network work, look at concepts, look at corridors, look at concepts for those. And then implementation is really a separate initiative.
Questions for Scott?
Any questions?
Hey, Scott, can you remind me where the survey is located?
Yeah, you can, probably the easiest way to find it is to go to wichita.gov/downtown streets.
Okay, thanks.
And what I will do is I will go ahead and post a link right here on the chat, and I will also post it tomorrow on Facebook on the District 6 Facebook page. So you can get it tonight from the chat or tomorrow from the District 6 page.
Thank you, Anna. Other questions for Scott? Comments or questions? Anything from, I think we still have a few people that aren't on the DAB. You guys have anything to questions or comments? You wore 'em out, Scott.
I guess so. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I mean, you know, you look at you think about it. I guess everyone's still thinking about it, right? They're like, wow, two-way traffic. Is there kind of, you know, these are some things that could, you know, they can be pretty big adjustments, but so I'm curious to know what you all think, and I'd love to get your feedback. So please take the survey. Please let us know. Send me an email, however works best for you.
All right, Scott, thanks for joining us. I was just teasing you. That was a really good job. I think.
No.
Information. I've seen a lot of this, but you know, some people haven't seen as much, so it's a great overview. And again, I encourage you, another survey, but encourage you to go out and take the survey. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay, we are now to the board agenda. Any updates, issues, or reports from any neighborhoods?
I had a question, Cindy. I had a question about the road over there on I think 21st and Waco. That it looks pretty rough, and then on Broadway between 13th and 17th. I just noticed those two roads are kind of like the bumpiest parts of, and I'm not sure if Broadway is actually your district or District 6, but I know, both of those just kind of really stand out to me as being kind of heavily driven roads and really in bad shape.
So I can tell you, let's see, 21st and Waco. I'm gonna have to look that one up. I know Broadway, 14th to 17th Street. That one, Public Works is very aware of. For some reason, like you get to 14th and all of a sudden it turns into this horrible street. I don't know what happened to it. So they're waiting until we finish the construction on 17th Street. So if you've been out there, you can see 17th's under a lot of construction right now, turning it into it'll have bike lanes and nice new surface. But they want to wait till they're finished with that, and then we'll come and look at Broadway and see how that fits in with what they're doing there. And 21st and Waco, Sean, I'll have to get back with you on that one because I don't remember where that one stands right now.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Anything else?
I have a question. Do you have any information on what's going on with the demolition over on 21st and Market area, No More area?
I don't know. Anna, have you heard anything? I mean, we're aware that it's going on, but it's private property.
So I did talk to, I talked to MABCD to see if they could tell me if there's any plans that had been submitted to them. And for right now, all they have is just a permit for demolition. Other than that, they don't have anything else filed with MABCD. So as of right now, it's just a permit for demolition.
Okay. Yeah, I have quite a few people asking me, and I'm like, well, I don't know, but I'll ask. So,
Yeah, and if there's any zoning changes, we'll see those. But if they're just doing things within zoning, they don't really even have to alert us to what's going on. No, I guess there would be a building permit of some sort if they are going to do new construction in that area.
There would be a plan review for something to be approved, but right now all they have is a permit for a demolition.
Are we talking about the southwest corner? Is that where that's at?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If you've been by there, they're taking those buildings down, and it's yeah. I'm like Angela. I don't know I haven't heard from anybody or been able to really ascertain what's going on.
huh. All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks for asking. Anything else? Any other updates, issues, or reports from DAB members?
Cindy, if you recall when we did the review of the request for change on the property north of 235, I expressed a lot of interest in the Woodrow drainage slough or canal or whatever it is.
Right.
One of our residents has turned in a couple of reports, and so I'm going to follow up on that. That has become problematic because there are several low areas now that are retaining water.
Okay. Yeah. So certainly, yeah. So have they've started that, they've changed that, they've made changes based on what they asked for in terms of zoning. They've had construction going on over there?
Oh, well, no, I'm sorry. There's an existing between Woodrow and Woodrow. There is a drainage canal that runs over to the pump station.
Right.
And there, because of erosion or whatever, there are at least 3 that I noticed, large areas where water's pooling instead of draining on down the canal. So they're going to have to get in and do some work.
Okay. It doesn't have anything to do with the zoning case. Okay.
No.
Yes, okay.
No, that's going to be another issue that they're supposed to contact me on.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, Phil. Anything else? Okay, I have just a couple of things. Want to report back on a zoning case we heard. So we heard this is the case we heard on July the 6th, and then it came back to us on August the 3rd, the protective overlay over at 203 North Handley for Ludeman installation and supply. So that passed City Council 7-0. So thank you all for your work on that. And then Saturday, we have a coffee. It'll be a virtual coffee Saturday at 9 a.m. And we're going to do a panel with some of our community policing officers. So not just to get statistics like they give us, but just to ask them a little bit about what community policing officers do and how the community can work with them. And so if you have any questions, please come with those, because we're going to open it up to the community for questions to community policing. So Anna, you have anything else on that?
No. So what I will do tomorrow is we'll send the special announcement update, and you will get that link to log into the virtual coffee on Saturday.
Okay.
All right. Anything else before we adjourn?
Vice Chair Clegum, I would like to remind our DAP members and anybody who's here from the different neighborhoods in the area, we still have masks that are being given away by the city of Wichita, and some were donated by Bank of America. So we have those available at Evergreen Neighborhood Research Center at 2700 North Woodlawn. If you guys know of any friends or anybody who's needing a mask, all you have to do is just go to the center and ask for a mask. You can pick up, if you have several members in your family, you can pick one up for them as well. Or if you know somebody who needs them, definitely send them our way.
Thanks, Anna. Good reminder. So, and we have lots of them, so don't be afraid. People need them, send them our way. So, all right. Anything else? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
say all right, we will see you. Our next meeting is Monday, October 5th. Can you believe that? All right, so we will see you in October. Y'all have a great evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.